everybody, I'm Elizabeth Hines from OurPaleoFamily.com, and tonight I have another Instant Pot recipe for you. This one is called Mongolian beef, and I have my Instant Pot on saute more. The Instant Pot instructions say for browning meat or searing meat you should use the normal setting, but I want it to go a little bit quicker, so I'm going to start it on more, and if I have to turn it down, I'll turn it down. What I have here is 1.5 pounds. Actually, what I asked for was 1.5 pounds, and what I got was closer to 1.75 pounds of a grass-fed top sirloin. So when you read recipes, you might find a recipe that says use top sirloin, or it might say London broil or round steak. A lot of those are very similar cuts. Basically, it's a leaner cut of meat, and that's what we want. And as I have cut through this one, to just make it easier for me to slice, there's a blood vessel in there, which is, I know it's meat, but that's disgusting to me. So as I get to that, I'll cut it out. My peanut gallery is agreeing with me that that's disgusting. So I'm just going to slice this into about 1/4 inch slices. And I failed to put the oil in my pot. So let me rinse my hand and I'll put the oil in. So I'm using avocado oil, and I just want a little bit in there. And I may have to add more as it goes. I'm going to use my long tongs. Let's see if it's hot. It's hot. It's sizzling. So let me slice quickly. I'll start at this end so I can get it going, and then I'll mess with that little piece I need to cut out. So just lay these pieces in a single layer, not overcrowding. If you wanted to hurry this along, you could certainly use a skillet on your stove. Maybe do some in the Instant Pot and then saute some on the stove. And I realized one end of my steak was thinner than the other. So I'm going to have some pieces that are larger, some pieces that are smaller. For this particular dish, that's totally fine. Okay, so I've about filled that up. I'm going to just let it go. So slicing against the grain if you can. I'm keeping my eye on that little blood vessel so I can cut that out. It'll just be a little bit tough, and it's a little bit gross. So I came up with this recipe because I saw that the Instant Pot recipes were so popular, and I honestly did not realize that the Instant Pot was the phenomenon that it is. Silly me that I just didn't realize it. But then I noticed that those were the videos that were being watched the most often. So I Googled something brilliant like best Instant Pot recipes. And not paleo or, gluten-free, any sort of diet, just, what are the best Instant Pot recipes? And there was one for Mongolian beef that was pretty close to the top, and I thought, oh, okay, I don't really know what Mongolian beef is, but I'm assuming that's, an Americanized Chinese sort of dish. Looked like it had a rich brown sauce. That sounded good. So I looked at the recipe, and I read people's comments on that blogger's website, and people just loved this recipe, so I thought, well, let's make that. But it contained gobs and gobs of sugar. I mean, gobs of sugar. Brown sugar, I think. And soy sauce. So, I knew I was going to have to make some substitutions to get this paleo-fied. So, see this little bloody thing in there? I just don't want that. I find it disgusting. Let me cut that off. When I sit down to eat my meal, I want to know that I can eat all of it and there's not some gross thing in there that I can't eat. So my first batch is browned. Really more seared than browned. You know, a lot of times I'm really going for browning. A few pieces have some browning, but most of them I would say are in the seared category. One person on my Instant Pot roast recipe said that Alton Brown, who is the Food Network, sort of their science techie guy, said that if you actually brown your meat, it makes it tough, and you should really just sear it to seal in the juices. And I can see how that makes sense. Certainly with some cuts of meat, it hasn't been my experience in reality, because I brown my meat all the time and I'm not dealing with tough meat. So I don't know that that's really true for every cut of meat, but maybe for some it is. So just interesting anyway. So we're just trying to get a little sear on this, and then we're going to add all of our flavorings to the Instant Pot and cook it for not very long. Now, when I made this recipe the first time, something happened to my, let's see, what was it? Something went wrong with the way it was sealing. I can't remember now what it was. Oh, I'll show you in just a second. So my Instant Pot didn't seal, and there was something wrong that I had never had happen before. So I wasn't looking for that. I had checked that the rubber gasket was in there, and you know, I had switched the valve to sealing, all the normal things, but this comes off. You can wash this, and it just wasn't on all the way. So instead of being pushed down, it was kind of, you know, halfway. And I noticed, I went to check and make sure, and I thought, it spins all the way around. I don't think that's the way it should be. So anyway, my point in telling you that is that first time I made this dish, it actually was really, really good. And the sauce was super thick and sort of syrupy, which is what I wanted. But it was that way straight out of the cooking process, because a lot of the liquid had evaporated when my pot was not sealed properly. So what's going to happen with it sealing properly is that we're going to have to thicken our sauce at the end. So once the pressure cooking part is through, I'll turn on the saute function again, and we'll let some of the liquid evaporate. But we're not going to add that much liquid anyway. We're going to add some fresh ginger, some fresh garlic, water, coconut aminos. Actually, instead of water, I'm going to use chicken broth. Coconut aminos, fish sauce, little coconut sugar, a little honey, and then a slurry of arrowroot and water at the very end during that saute portion to help it brown. Sorry, thicken. I'm thinking browning. One of the things I did read, which may be helpful to you, when I was madly Googling, why isn't my Instant Pot sealing? Because, you know, I knew I had taken care of the main potential reasons why it wouldn't seal. I need a teeny bit more oil in there. And one of the things this article said, which again, this isn't from the Instant Pot people, it was just some other, you know, food blogger, I guess. You know, food bloggers, they're crazy. But this person said if you browned your meat or vegetables or whatever, and you did not take the time to deglaze your pan, so it had the bottom basically covered with the fond, that brown stuff, which mine is pretty covered, that would keep it from pressurizing. I haven't had that happen, but that's what this person said. So keep that in mind. If ever you're having trouble getting your Instant Pot to pressurize, think about if maybe that is a problem. Did you brown something and you didn't take time to deglaze? Alright, so while my meat is browning, I'm going to get all my other ingredients ready. There's a decent amount of moisture coming out of this meat. So it's seeming like everything is really burning. And a lot of that brown fond on the bottom of the Instant Pot, but it's soft. It's not, it doesn't feel burned. Does that make sense? So this is some broth. It's mostly chicken broth. There's a little bit of, I cooked another Asian dish, and there was a little bit, it was chicken, a little piece of chicken. There was a little bit of the, sort of the brothy sauce left from that dish. And so I just poured it in with this broth, knowing I was going to be making this again. So there is a little bit of an Asian essence to my broth here. And you can see how jiggly this is, like Jell-O. That is good. Bone broth smells so good. It smells like oranges. That was like an orange chicken. You take this load out, and I hope I can get the last batch in all at once. So this really doesn't take too long. Every time I think about making a dish like this and think about the size of the cooking surface of the Instant Pot, like, oh, it's going to take forever. But it really cooks very quickly. It doesn't take that long. And, you know, you're busy doing other stuff, so it works out okay. And the Instant Pot, of course, is making it all go more quickly. I couldn't quite get those in. I need 2 cloves of garlic and a teaspoon of fresh ginger. Let me scoop this so you can see here. I'm just going to smash my garlic. I try to keep the cloves intact, but I gave them enough of a whack that the skin would come off. And then I'm going to grate my garlic. I just want it really small. You know, you can buy that grated garlic in jars in the produce section at the grocery store. So this is essentially, you're just making your own. Just be careful as it gets to the end. You don't grate your fingers. And that wouldn't feel very good or taste very delicious. There it is. And then I really lucked out and I found this nice fat piece of ginger, which usually ginger has all these tiny little knobs, and so it's kind of hard to get to the ginger. And so I found that this really fat piece. I was overjoyed. And it was at a new store we have here called Lidl. It looks like Lidl, but they tell us it's Lidl. And it's kind of like Aldi. I talk about Aldi a lot. They have a lot of their house brands, and it's much less inexpensive than regular grocery store for a lot of things. They're not going to have as many products. But I have found it to be a really pleasant store. I've enjoyed shopping there. So I'm just going to peel this, my vegetable peeler. But I was thrilled this week to find that they even had organic, fresh ginger, which is not always easy to find. So you just peel off a section and then just grate it. And just like the garlic, it'll kind of stick to the back. You have to whack it out. And you want about a teaspoon. You can use less if you don't like it or you don't think you're going to like it. Fresh ginger is spicy. But if you use the proper amount, it just adds an amazing flavor and totally different than powdered ginger. I mean, you can use the powdered ginger, and I do use it in some of my recipes. It's faster and easier, but it doesn't have the same flavor. So I wanted about a teaspoon, so I'm just going to kind of gather that up. Okay, so my meat is all browned. I'm going to take it out. Oh, those last few pieces I put in, I didn't flip over. That's all right. Totally fine. So I have all that yummy stuff on the bottom. I do need to get that up. I'll probably grab a different tool for that. Let me pour in my broth. is so rich. It's going to add more flavor than water. So if you have broth, use broth. If you only have water, use water. I've made it with water. It's good. This is just better. So I'm using my flat wire whisk. You wouldn't want to use this wire whisk on a nonstick pan, but they make this same one that has the silicone coating, so you can use that style of whisk on a nonstick pan. It's great for something like this. It's flexible, and it'll help me really get all that stuff up off the bottom. Okay, so I've deglazed. I have my ginger and my garlic. 2 cloves of garlic, about a teaspoon of fresh ginger. That goes in. I need a half a cup of coconut aminos, which this says olive oil, but it's because my coconut aminos jar or bottle was broken when it came from Thrive Market this last time. So I had to empty it all out, and this is what I had available. So that's our soy sauce alternative in the paleo world, okay? It is sweet. It's a fermented coconut product. It's sweet and salty at the same time, so it will definitely give us that Asian feel to our sauce. I need a teaspoon of fish sauce. Oh, I'm almost out. This lasts a long time because it has so much flavor. You don't use a lot of it. 1 teaspoon is about the most I ever use in a single recipe. Oh, I forgot something. Okay, we're going to use 2 kinds of sweetener in our sauce. I've been baking so much that my measuring spoons and spatulas and things don't even make it into the drawer. They just are dirty and then they're clean. Okay, 2 tablespoons of coconut sugar, which is nice and brown, like raw sugar or what am I trying to think of? Brown sugar. Yeah, brown sugar. Does not taste like brown sugar. It definitely has a distinct flavor, but it will add that sort of caramely essence that you would get from brown sugar. So we use it in that way in paleo cooking. And then 2 tablespoons of honey. You could use, whoops, it was full. You could use maple syrup instead if you prefer, which I almost always prefer maple syrup. I don't really like the flavor of honey, but in this particular dish I don't want that mapley flavor. But if you happen to not have honey, then you could use maple syrup. It would be fine. Okay, we'll get all that in there. And that's the last thing. Let me stir this around because this spoon has my broth on it. And you notice I didn't put any salt in this dish, none. And that's because the aminos are salty, just like soy sauce is salty. And at the end of your cooking time, you can add, you can always add more. Oh, that was that little piece of garlic. You can always add some salt and pepper, but it is hard to get rid of it if you have too much in there. So I am going to give just a little taste to my sauce. It tastes amazing. Amazing. It's going to be so good. Okay, and then our beef and all of its yummy juices will cook in there. Woo! And I was going to say I want to try to put it in gently so it doesn't splash. There we go. And just kind of stir it around so that all the meat is nestled down in the sauce. Every time I've made this, I've reduced the amount of coconut aminos and I've reduced the amount of sweetener because it was just too sweet and too salty at the same time. And so I think I've hit on just the perfect amounts. But if you make this and you think you want it a little bit sweeter, then you can add a little bit more, okay? It won't hurt my feelings. All right, so we put the lid on and we make sure all the pieces are intact. Okay, my rubber gasket is in there. My valve is seated on properly. The lid is on and set. Valve to sealing. And then we want manual, high pressure, 12 minutes. And while that's going, all I'm going to do is chop up a whole bunch of vegetables and roast those in the oven. And we're going to have that with our Mongolian beef. So I'll see you back in a little bit and show you the finished product. Okay, so our beef is done. It took just about 3 minutes to come up to pressure. So let me stop my timer. I was timing how long it took for the pressure to come down, and it was 10 minutes. I was a little slower to get here, but the pressure came down in 10 minutes. So it cooked for 12. It had to go up to pressure, fully pressurized, 3 minutes, and then down for 10. So 30 minutes plus our prep time of about 10 minutes. So a 40 to 45 minute dinner. And I have some rice on the stove that I have prepared for my family, and some vegetables roasting in the oven. So let's get this. It's on saute. Now again, I told you before, when I made this and the Instant Pot didn't seal, the sauce was nice and thick and syrupy, which is how I really want it to be, and it was like that because it wasn't under pressure for most of the cooking time, and a lot of the liquid had evaporated. But it pressurized properly this time. So I'm actually going to give it, because my vegetables aren't quite done, I'm going to let this boil for about, I don't know, just a few minutes and let a little bit of the liquid evaporate. And then I'm going to add my arrowroot slurry. And I'm just going to serve this with the rice, a bunch of vegetables, and then I have some green onions that I will garnish the top. So I'm going to get those cleaned and get everything ready. Okay, so this has been boiling for about 4 minutes, and a decent amount of the liquid has evaporated. In my bowl, I have 1.5 tablespoons of cold water and 1 tablespoon of arrowroot, and you can mix it and it will settle. So you can do this ahead of time if you want, and just remix it. It'll mix back up. And then we'll just pour that in while our liquid is bubbling. Give that a stir around real quick. And the starch will cook and the sauce will thicken up. That is a little too hot for my short little spoon. I'm going to turn it down to adjust it at this point, I can't adjust, okay? I have to turn it back off, turn the saute back on, now adjust it to less. So that's the lowest level, which is what I want. See this? Beautiful. And it's so delicious and tender. So let's start building our plate here with some rice, which looks nice and golden because it was cooked in broth, and that broth had a little bit of leftover sort of Asian flair from my citrus chicken thighs, which I did in the Instant Pot as well. Yep, we'll scoot that to the side. A big pan of roasted vegetables. So just whatever you have. I like a lot of green with a meal like this. I mostly had these cute little haricot vert. I'm probably saying that terribly. I apologize. The little French green beans, the skinny ones, that I just washed and cut in half. I had a package of cremini or baby bella mushrooms. I threw in some baby carrots and some broccoli florets. When I've made this in the past, I served it with just broccoli. And my husband, who is so great at just eating whatever I cook, said maybe some additional vegetables besides just the broccoli. So that is what I did. We did a whole bunch of different veggies. And now we'll spoon up some of this delicious beef, which I tasted, and it is tender and super flavorful. A little bit of extra sauce on there. If you can eat sesame, you like sesame seeds as a garnish, that would be really cute on here. Cute, that's not the right word. Pretty, it would make a nice garnish. We're going to use some green onions. I washed them, I'm just going to cut them with my kitchen scissors. And there we go, Mongolian beef in the Instant Pot with rice, roasted veggies. If you wanted to make this Whole30, if you are watching this in January and you're starting a Whole30 to kick off your year, yes, there is sweetener in here. So we have 2 tablespoons of honey and 2 tablespoons of coconut sugar. You can leave that out entirely. And to add a little bit of sweetness, you could put in a couple dates. And dates are very sweet. And a little bit goes a long way. And especially, let me turn this off now. Especially if you have this sort of at the midway point towards the end of your Whole30, where your taste buds have adjusted to not having sugar, so much sugar on your palate, then this would taste delicious without all that sweetness. And I promise just a couple dates would add enough of that sweetness. Okay, so Mongolian beef in the Instant Pot. Just a great weeknight or even a special occasion meal because it seems fancy. It's definitely like the takeout, fake out, better than your favorite chain. There is one Chinese chain that has a gluten-free menu, which is miraculous and we love it, but it's expensive. And there's always a super long wait. So you can make it at home and you know the quality of what you're getting, and you can pile on the veggies and make yourself a super healthy version of Mongolian beef at home. So I hope you enjoy this one. Come back soon for another video. Thanks everybody.